So I think ultimately the questions are pretty similar in a lot of ways to those asked by a venture group thinking of investing. Number one, I'd say, like, is the science solid? Do you believe their data? Are all the proper controls in place? Is it unique and differentiated from the competition? The question one is all about the science. Question two, and I guess this is a place where it differentiates from, kind of what VCs may ask, but do you have a need for it? Sometimes there's really cool, super promising science that simply doesn't fit into the therapeutic areas of interest or other strategic priorities of the company. And so in this vein, when Seth and I were looking at opportunities, we'd often ask each other, who will champion this? And if you can't name someone at the company, a scientist who would be willing to give up their time and their budget to champion something, that tells you something. And then I'd say number three is the people. Ultimately, just like in venture investing, people do BD deals with people that they like, people that they want to work with. These are often, multi-year collaborations where you work very closely with the other team. You want to trust and respect the other team members, and it certainly doesn't hurt if you actually like them.
Becky hit all of that right on the head of the nail. And the only thing I would add is there can be nuance in what kind of partnership is being sought and to what degree the parties will work with each other. So to give sort of the extreme opposite ends of these examples, on the one hand, you have something like a pure patent licensing arrangement effectively where one party just wants access to the other's intellectual property, but effectively doesn't want to work in any meaningful way. And then on the complete other end of this, you can imagine a true partnership where scientists, where entrepreneurs, where creators are all sitting together in rooms, running experiments together, creating, discovering, all hand in hand, arm in arm. And then between those two is a whole variety of things in between. And they do have differences, I think, with how they're evaluated and how much the pharma needs to think about, does it meet not just our strategic priorities, but does it also make sense from a resourcing perspective? If you're going to to go back to the extreme examples, right? If it's a pure patent licensing partnership, then the pharma company would need to really have not just scientific champions and desire to work in that space, but also the capability and the people set to do so, which is not always the case, right? Pharmas, while they're very large organizations, don't have infinite resources and infinite people, and they make choices about particular technologies, particular capabilities to emphasize over others, which means in some situations, they can't work on things. Some pharmas, for example, work more in gene therapy, while others work more in small molecules, and maybe don't necessarily have capabilities in both, although some do. The flip side is when you think about the true hand-in-hand partnerships, sometimes those are actually about the pharma not having capability and wanting to build up some level of expertise and knowledge and familiarity in a field, and wanting to do it with the top people and the top technology, but acknowledging that the pharma may actually not be the expert in the room in that situation. It may be the smaller company, the startup that really knows the novel technology space better and is in part going to be the ones helping teach the pharma how to operate in that situation. And so it's difficult to come up with a single rule in that wide range of situations as to what's the right way to go about pursuing a partnership, what's the right version of a partnership. I do think, similar to what Becky said, a fundamental question most startups need to ask themselves is, do we even want to partner? I think increasingly today, there's a greater appetite amongst the venture community for companies that understand the science deeply, understand the value they're creating, and don't necessarily need to partner so early that they end up in partnerships where a lot of the economics are going to the larger partner. It's a bit of a give and take. Sometimes you need partnerships in order to raise your next round of funding, but sometimes you would rather keep the programs and your capabilities internal to the biotech, internal to the company longer to continue to incubate them further, continue to generate more value before you would entertain partnerships.
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting point. I think up until recently, like a pharma BD deal was like a Twitter blue check mark. Like you had to have it, it proved that you were legit. and it was expected by the best biotech companies, in some cases at the Series A raise, or maybe, you know, at the very least by the Series B. But I think today the situation has changed, and I've been seeing this both from the venture side and also hearing this from pharma BD friends. You know, capital has become so abundant that non-dilutive funding via partnerships is less essential. And we're seeing that many companies are willing to hold out for the big strategic splashy partnership. And if they can't get the price tag that they're looking for, they'd rather retain the value internally. So, you know, I think in general, the existence of a pharma partnership is viewed as a positive signal, but the details do matter, as Seth said. And I may respect a company who has decided to turn down a prospective partnership even more than one who has taken a deal that's really more of a distraction than it is a value add.
Yeah, and the one aspect I'd add, just as you think about that as a startup, is value adds can come in many forms. Some of them are straight economics, right? Cash from the pharma. But sometimes, you know, you don't want to build a capability, right? Maybe you don't want to build a commercial sales force or commercial marketing force, and you would rather just have the pharma bring that value to the table. And so there are reasons, I think, beyond straight economics to go into partnerships if it's going to be distracting from your company's vision. Maybe you vision your company as a neuroscience focused company, but you turned up a really cool oncology target along the way. And you could choose to build out an oncology team, or you could stay neuroscience focused and let someone else work on the oncology aspect. So it's all very nuanced. I guess I'm like doing the standard BD thing of saying everything's negotiable, everything matters, everything's unique. But I think in a way it really is true, and especially when you're a founder and it's your company, you want to optimize for your unique situation, and a single blanket rule, which I don't think Becky or I believe there is, but you might hear from some advisors, is just not the optimal situation.
Yeah, that's so true. Dave Piaquad, the head of Amgen BD, used to say, deals are like snowflakes. Each one is unique.